I'm just going to start this off. This is a slate test, and while I was on the biology of the soil and the soil structure, certainly the conversation I'm having, the more and more growers I go and see and doing these healthy soils assessments, is growers are saying to me, well, I want to find out what's going on in my soil, because certainly if they've been on a farm for any number of years, my soil is not behaving like it used to. It doesn't stand wetting like it used to. It doesn't stand drying like it used to. It's harder to work than it was to get the same result. And I'm having to feed it more than I used to. And that's largely because of the way the soil is, or the resilience of the soil to wetting and drying. And that improves beyond all recognition when you start to incorporate the right chemical processes, structural processes and biological processes within your soil. So this jar here, which has still got some soil sat in it in the top, as you can see, that is soil from this field. So that's Claydon system soil. And you'll see this with any system where you're moving less and less soil, incorporating lots of organic matter and building your worm populations. Because having a big worm population is an indicator of really good biological activity, because they're like top of the food chain in your biological processes. If we've got a piece of soil here from some neighbouring land which is cultivated heavily all the time, you probably can't all see it where you are, it depends where the sun is, but hopefully you can see that this soil is much darker colour than this soil here. The darker colour indicates that it's got more biology, more organic matter within it. But otherwise those soils look pretty similar. I've taken those soils both from fields that are growing crops currently, so they're full of roots. They've been drying out, so full of roots, so they look very, very similar at the moment. I'm going to start this now and we'll probably come back to it because it happens a little bit slowly. But this soil here has been sat in that jar since Monday morning. 10 o'clock on Monday morning. Sorry, 10 o'clock Tuesday morning. It's held together by all of the biological glues that are going on in that soil. So you've got all of the biology that Liz probably talked about, you know, the protozoas, the nematodes, the bacteria, the fungi. It's all living, growing, being eaten, dying, and producing sticky substances, glues, glomalins that stick that soil together in natural process. Plus you've got roots actively growing through that soil which are locking that soil together as well. And we've got the root element in both of these bits of soil. But you can see how resilient that soil is. That has filled up with water in a controlled way. It's now storing that water, but importantly it's staying together. So that is what stops your soil from capping over winter when you get heavy rain. The water will infiltrate through it, the aggregates are stable, it doesn't all fall apart and cap off. And at this time of year, the roots can get into that soil and there's lots of water stored within that, all the way through that soil aggregate, that the plants can now get out again. If I drop a bit of this soil into here, I'd say we'll probably have to come back in 5 minutes, but you can already see what's happening. We may not have to come back in 5 minutes. That soil is starting to fall apart and degrade almost instantly. Now that's mimicking what heavy rain over winter will do. We'll probably get a few minutes of that happening, then it'll fill up with water slowly. But when we get to the end, you know, I can press this down and very little happens. That is still very resilient. And what you can also see is that the bits of soil that are dropping off that are still in small aggregate form. They're going straight to the bottom of the jar and the jar is remaining clear. You can see how cloudy this jar was even before starting. After about 15 minutes that will be completely on the boil. You can see how much soil we've put through that jar and what's happening. Now I will show you a bit of soil that is a much higher silt content, typical of growing potatoes, typical of soil that growers think, well, this is easy to work, so I'll get the plough out and the subsoiler and the power harrow because I can do what I like when I like with this soil. It's easy to do it too. And I grow potatoes or sugar beets, so I'm justified in doing it. But as you'll all know, that type of soil caps off really quickly. Grower's answer is just to knock it about again with a cultivator. But what's happening, this soil has got a crop growing in it, so the roots are holding it together to a degree. This is overwintered ploughing, no roots in it. History of cultivation through ploughing, power harrowing, or growing potatoes or sugar beet. Now you watch that bit of soil. As that starts to wet up, that will literally take about a minute to completely disintegrate and end up, look at that, end up on the bottom of that jar. And you can see straight away that it's falling apart into its constituent components, sand, silt and clay. It's not breaking up into little aggregates. So that cannot store water because there's nothing to store water in. It's all in its individual components. So although soil can look very much the same, and we just dig it out and have a quick look during the growing season, actually its long-term behaviour, its resilience is really impacted by the way we manage it. Okay, we'll come back to that. So give this a tap. It's still largely resilient. We're getting aggregates dropping to the bottom. The grass or the water is staying pretty much still absolutely clear. But if I give this one a tap now, you can see that just falls apart completely. Jars full of suspended clay and silt elements. That's all running down your drains, streams, into the river. That's taking a lot of phosphate with it, and that'll be the next issue environmentally we have to address, no doubt. So we'll probably get restrictions on the amount of phosphate we can apply. How do we get over that? Put small amounts down the drill, directly around the growing plant. Rather than feed the soil, feed the plant. But you can see, building resilience into your soil is absolutely key to withstanding wet periods and dry periods.